Howdy, welcome back to Dion Talk. Recently, I re-released a video from a little over a year ago, a few months before I retired. And in that video, I explained the math on how much I was making per hour looking at my rental portfolio. I broke down if I looked at every hour of every day. I looked at if I worked a 40-hour work week, what would my income look like? In that video, I got some great questions. I got some great responses, some good emails. You can always reach me at dion@diontalk.com with your questions through email if you don't want to ask it here publicly. On live streams like this on my phone, I generally don't answer questions. If you want your questions answered live every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific, I do live streams that generally last as long as the questions do. And I do those on my computer so that I can actually answer questions. But what I want to do in this video for you and for me is I want to make this video so that I have a video to send to the about 20 people who reached out with the same question. Might have been phrased a little different, but it was very similar. Almost everybody said in that video, where I was making it kind of towards the beginning of the year, a little bit before April-ish of 2022, I made that video talking about my cash flow where I was projecting that year I'd make about $168,000. I missed because my cash flow for 2022, and I know this from my tax records, was a bit over $17,000 a month, which ended up being about $204,000 a year for the year. It was like 204, 290 or something like that on my tax returns. And I apologize in this video, just like in that video, that a left-handed person struggles to write on a whiteboard, but I'm going to do my best, so bear with me. If you can't read something, I will try to make it clearer. The idea is, I wrote in that video that my income was $168,000 a year, and it broke down to about $80 an hour, $19 an hour if it was 24 hours a day, $8 an hour if it was a 40-hour work week. And it was a pretty detailed video, just letting you know how the little squirrel in here thinks about numbers. But when I point out that I retired last year because my financial freedom number for me, since I'm house hacking and I like to travel in places like Colombia or Thailand or Portugal where the dollar is pretty strong and it goes farther, about $4,000 a month is what I need to be financially independent, that when my cash flow would pass about $16,000 a month, I'd feel kind of silly going to work. So finishing out the year at $17,000 is kind of why I retired. But the truth about cash flow is, here's the question. And this question came from, like I said, at least 20 different people. Someone comments on the video, some through email, some on social media. They would say the question like this. So if you're thinking this is what this video is here to do. It's here to clarify my lack of clarity in that video, because this wasn't the point. I was explaining what my income was. In this video, I'm explaining what my cash flow is. So cash flow, $17,000 a month, $204,000 a year. The question everybody kept sending me was, are you sure you can retire on that? Because what about the mortgages you have? Principal, interest, taxes, insurance, like those things exist. Tenants are going to trash your property. They're going to break things. There's going to be vacancies. There's going to be times when people move out of your properties and you have a month where you're covering the mortgage. You have to fix the flooring and the paint and repair any damage that they did, and sometimes their deposit's not going to cover all of it. So what about those expenses? Well, in this video I'm clarifying, $17,000 per month, $204,000 per year is cash flow. That's not my income. Most of these numbers are off the top of my head because I want to show you, this. The reason I'm doing this as a live stream and not doing an edited video is I wanted you to see that some of these numbers matter to me and some of them don't. This is one I know. $29,440 every month comes in income from rents. So $29,440 per month. Income. That's not mine. That's the income. Cash flow is mine. The income at $29,440 a month gives me about $353K per year. $353,000 per year income. Okay? So you're right. I do have mortgages to pay. The principal, interest, taxes, and insurance are going to come out of the income. So if $29,000 a month is coming in from rents, and I have, it's a little less than this, but I'm gonna round off just for ease, it's $8,000 a month in mortgages. $8,000 a month going out every month. At the beginning of the month, that first week, my bank accounts play what I call vertical pong. It goes rent, mortgage, rent, rent, mortgage, rent, mortgage, rent, rent, rent. Because the $8,000 goes out every month out of the 29, giving me $96,000 per year going out, paying principal, which is taking an amount off of the debt that I actually have, so the tenants are paying off part of my mortgage, interest, which goes to the people who lent me the money to buy the properties, the taxes, which is where I figure I'm giving back to the community. My tenants pay over $40,000 a year in taxes, and then insurance to protect my assets. It's one of the 3 forms of asset protection that I use. So if I have $8,000 coming out, you would think, okay, so you have like $21,000 a month coming in. Why is it only 17? That's because people are right. When you deal with tenants, toilets, and termites, they're gonna break stuff. You're gonna have to replace a roof. You're gonna have garage doors go out. Earlier this year, I had 3 or 4 refrigerators and 3 or 4 water heaters go out within the 2-month period, all pretty much happening while I was traveling in Portugal, handling most of it through emails and text. So what we do is we take a gross rent, the income coming in, we take a portion of the gross rents, an amount that isn't ours. It gets set aside before we get our cash flow. Now you might choose a different number. Some people get very technical on this and they say, how old is the building? When were the updates done? Was it fully rehabbed recently? I don't do that. I looked at most of the expenses I ever had, and then I pretty much doubled it. And I thought, if I set aside 10% for repairs and maintenance and 5% for vacancy, even though I've never had a vacancy. My longest tenant turnover was 4 days between tenant moving out and tenant moving in. 4 days to get everything done was actually kind of rough. But I still set aside 10% for repairs and maintenance and 5% for vacancy. So 15% of gross rents. So 15% of this 29 gives me about $4,400 a month that's getting set aside for future expenses. Not for this month, for 3 years from now, for next month. That gives me about $53K per year. $53,000 that the tenants are paying me that gets put into the repairs, maintenance, and vacancy account. Now, I keep my reserves very specifically. They scaled with my portfolio. When my portfolio was less than 7 units, I kept about 10 grand in there. When it was between 7 and 16, I kept about 30, but that was while I had a W-2. Last year when I retired, I increased my reserves to 52,000. So there is 53,000 being set aside every year for repairs, maintenance, and vacancy. Since that reserve account is full, that doesn't mean I add 53,000 a year to my cash flow. That 53 then gets added to the investing fund to speed up the time between now and the next investment purchase. So if you take your $29,000 a month in income, you subtract your $8,000 for mortgages, my $4,400, it gives me my $17,000 a month in cash flow that is mine. That's after repairs, maintenance, vacancy, taxes, principal, interest, taxes, insurance, all of those things. That's the cash flow. The $204,000 a year, again, I took the full income of $353, the $96,000 a year for mortgages, the $53,000 a year being set aside for future repairs, maintenance, and vacancies. What's missing from this equation? This is my cash flow. This is what's coming in. If you have a W-2 job and you make $204,000 a year, meaning your income every month is $17,000 a month, now you're going to pay income tax. Here's the beauty of real estate. Take a note. It's almost like Congress is full of people who own real estate and keep making laws that benefit people who own real estate. Because of depreciation and write-offs, I've never paid a penny in rental income tax. That $204,000 was mine after taxes. From the year before, I carried forward an $8,900 loss on paper because of depreciation and write-offs to use against this, plus the depreciation and write-offs from this year. Then, this year, from 2022 to 2023, I'm carrying forward almost a $12,000 paper loss to use against the income from this year. And in this year, I've added to this by moving from my fourplex. If you're familiar with my content, I'm a house hacker as well. I've only house hacked 3 times. I'm in my 3rd one now. Moved into a duplex, which is a self-funded house hack burr, in the middle of remodeling the other unit. But the place that I moved out of, I had roommates, and I have now rented out the room I moved from, increasing my income by $1,000 a month without adding any expenses. So this $17,000 a month is over 18 now. Plus, the duplex I purchased was purchased with cash, so there's no mortgage. There's just taxes, insurance, and maintenance and vacancy. The other unit, once it's rented out, will also increase the cash flow. I am making this video specifically, if you're watching this in Futureland, for those people who heard me talk about my cash flow and then asked the question, well, what about your mortgage? What about taxes and insurance? What about repairs, maintenance, and vacancy? When we use the term cash flow, we mean after all that stuff. Again, if you're interested in getting your questions answered live, every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific, I do live streams where I answer all of the questions. Thanks for hanging out with me here on a Saturday when I was making this in not Futureland. And this is the last day of the special, where if you want to, you can go to DionTalk.com. There you can do 3 things. 1, you can book an hour with me if you want me to take a deep dive look into your situation. 2, you can get a free course on my binder strategy. That's where I get my tenants to ask me to raise the rent. And in that free course, you'll also get my spreadsheet that tracks my income and expenses that me and my CPA made. You'll get my seller financing letter, all for free. Or you could take my course there at DionTalk.com on financial freedom for the lazy person. Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk.